So, first of all, I want to thank you for many extraordinary experiences this weekend, many breakthroughs, both speaking for myself, but also a sense of community that developed in the group. And one of the moments that was precious to me was when we did the exercise, the meditation, to go to the top floor of the house of the brain.
Yes.
The brain, and the center of the second floor is a spiral staircase that brings us down to a room on the left. I realize I've been going too far left. this left, and to open the door, and then remember to close it behind you. And inside that room, I found a woman who was my greatest teacher. And I have to tell you about her, because I know you will understand. Her name was Kay Ortmans. She was English. She was the daughter of a concert violinist who kept her as a baby in his lap while he was rehearsing. And she got those vibrations in her body. She became a holistic health pioneer. She had a center in Ben Lomond, California. And I met her in her advanced old age when she was still moving forward. And at one point, I mean, she was my friend, but also my great teacher. And at one point, I went to California, to San Francisco, to do a pilot program for a very ambitious project that I was very attached to. And it was a complete flop. And I came back, and she said to me, "Well, you didn't do it with your brain, did you?" And remembering that, because I never really understood that. I didn't understand what she meant. Of course I would do it with my brain. What else was I going to do it with? Now I understand.
It sounds like, Jung going to the Pueblo Indian, to the reservation, and talking with Mirabal, the Native American. And after an hour or so, Mirabal said, you white people, I don't understand. You're all shifting your eyes all the time, and you have thin lips, and you think you're thinking with your brain." And Jung said, "Well, of course, everybody thinks with their brain. What do you think with?" And he says, "Here."
The heart. So we've been opening the heart for the last 4 days in all kinds of interesting ways, through different meditation techniques, through introduction to Native American spirituality, which always makes me a little nervous. Because there's always the problem of co-optation.
Yes.
And we've taken everything from these people, and now we're taking their spirituality.
Yes. No, that's I'm very aware of that, and thank goodness there is this extraordinary Ute Pueblo Indian, Joseph Real, who works the other way. He's gone so deeply into his tradition. He's a mystic. There's a book about him.
What is his name?
Joseph Real, and a book about him that places him in the context of the great mystics. So he's able to take his tradition and make available in a language that is more ours for this time, and that's so I found him a great help in what I'm doing. Plus, unfortunately, because much of the tradition, the Native American tradition, is dying. Their spirit is so still under attack. That my hope is this is not their tradition, but it is the way it can now live in our present time and circumstances. So nothing I presented was, strictly speaking, Native American, but it was listening to the Native American tradition.
Have we come to a place of atonement, of at least the recognition of all we have taken away, but with a sense of debt? We've talked a lot about debt. We talked about the original, not the original sin, but the original debt of our nation. That
we have not at all, not anywhere even begun, and probably won't begin atonement. The Native Americans are still taken from their tradition by our government. Still. There's a 70, 75, 76-year-old Native American that was accused of abusing his grandchildren, which he didn't do at all. But he was first taken to the tribal court, and they all had no trouble at all saying this is bogus, and freed him. But he's still subject to the American government, who took him to court miles and miles away in South Dakota, miles from his people and a jury that knew nothing about his tradition at all. They convicted him and put him in prison for 90 years. It's all right in a way. He became a healer in the prison of everybody. But just that, honestly, I don't know why or what's the motive, but there's still a very, very strong work against the Native Americans and the attempt to destroy their spirit.
Do you know the book Killers of the Flower Moon?
No.
It's an extraordinary work of investigative journalism on the part of a New York Times journalist. And it tells the story of the Osage Indians and how, this, and you mentioned this is happening all over, that the land that they were given in Oklahoma creamed with oil.
Yes.
They were sitting on top, and they became fabulously rich.
Right.
And of course we can't allow that.
Right.
So what happened was the entire community conspired, whether consciously or unconsciously or both, to murder them.
Yeah.
And they did it in the most egregious way. They married them and then killed them, murdered them, poisoned them.
Yeah.
And it's just now coming to light. And I think there's a reason for it coming to light at this time. But you mentioned, just in passing, that this is a phenomenon that doesn't just apply to the history of the Osage.
No, every indigenous peoples everywhere are still subject to being eliminated. And why? What is that? What in the world is that?
To answer that, based on the experience of this retreat, what you are offering through them is the challenge of simplicity, the challenge of openness, opening the heart, living out of the heart rather than living out of the head. And it's so it's so undermining to the me culture that you've talked about. Subversive to the me culture and the greed that has its grip on us.
Yes, it's as if every vestige of living close to Earth, of Earth, in place, with nature, as spiritual, it's as if that has to all be removed to ensure perfect consumerism. And it's just, when you think of it, I mean, it's very, very bizarre.
You also mentioned it's a great moment, as bad as it is. Why?
It's a great moment because we now we're at the culmination point, I think, of the me civilization. That it's all about me for everybody, because we have our president, who is kind of the epitome of the me person. So we get to see ourselves and what that does. What that does, and it hopefully will awaken us. That, as well as approaching our president through the heart, taking him into heart.
You prayed for him.
Yeah. I just brought him into the heart, and I don't know what that I don't know what that does, but it'll. If many people did that, that will change the country. No question.
You said that you believe that we are on the verge of a revolution in spiritual consciousness, moving out of the me culture into a culture of spiritual consciousness.
Spiritual earth consciousness.
Earth consciousness. How could I have left earth out of it?
Yeah.
Or maybe I should say, how could I not have left earth out of it? I mean, because it's so easy to forget the earth.
Yeah. Well, partly because it's our everyday life, and although it's we're all affected by a culture that is actually anti-earth. It looks at earth completely literally as resources, as to give us whatever we need, however we need it, in the most prolific way that we think we need.
I wonder if part of that has to do with death denying. The earth, of course, is where we get buried.
Yes.
And perhaps we don't want to think about that.
Yes. Greed is a strange form of trying to act as if you're immortal. Because you keep having the next thing, that in the midst of the next thing, you don't think of the fact that each moment we're also dying. So we've learned to place death way out there somewhere. Yeah, I know I'm going to die, but I don't have any sense, like, again, in nature, everything is living and dying simultaneously, and there's life and there's death, and that's the whole. There's no such thing of. I mean, that's. You're right. It's trying to be rid of that imagination that. Not that we're going to die, but that we are dying each moment, as well as coming alive in new ways each moment. We're not the same. We're not permanent.
You pointed that out, even physiologically. Every breath, every heartbeat has its moment of gap.
Yep. Every between the exhale and the inhale, there is a gap. There's a slight gap, and that's death happening. And between the systole and the diastole, there's a moment, there's a gap. It's a moment of dying. But dying simply means there's an opening. There's an opening now, if where spirit can enter. Spirit can't enter where everything is occupied. It has to have an open place. And that's happening all the time. But we can lose connection completely with it, and then it begins to, it means then we live a degenerative life. It just means we're running down. That what do they call that? The opposite of each moment. Everything is being born out of the moment of nothing.
So you mentioned that one of the results of the me culture is it's warfare, grief, and depression.
Yeah, when death is not a part of life, death nevertheless has to have its place. So death becomes projected on the others throughout the world as violence, as war, as now, every day within our own civilization is happening. If it's violence in schools and senseless killing, it's because death has to have its place. But that's a misplaced place.
Does that account for the opiate culture, the opiate epidemic?
Like most drugs, well, that particular drug is to kill pain, to try to. Also, if we're not able to live and die every moment, then isn't it odd that that pain increases? Pains of we're not built to stand some kind of notion of having everything all the time. We're not constructed humanly that way. So it gets boring quick. And a lot of times drugs are spirit alternatives, because they give you a moment of high and
well, that might indicate that there is an enormous hunger for the spirit at large in this country right now.
There's an enormous hunger for a sense of real spirit, meaning not spirit talked about, not spirit preached about, but how in the world is it actually felt, as embodied, as all around us is filled with spirit, the sky is filled with spirit. We're worked at trying to find our way into feeling it. It's in the flesh. It's in the material world. It's not separate. That's the other difficulty, is that searching for spirit, we have a notion that somehow it doesn't have to do with this world.
The other world.
Has to do with the other world, yeah.
Matter, and we have the separation of matter and spirit, and that's one of the things you brought together.
Yeah.
You said, let's see, what did you say? How matter, wait a minute, I've got the quote from, matter is spirit moving slowly enough to be seen. That's from Teilhard.
Teilhard de Chardin. Yeah. Matter is spirit moving slow enough to be seen. That's what a picture.
Maybe we're not moving slowly enough.
Well, we're not. Well, it's the opposite. Faster and faster and faster and faster. And
it's another form of addiction.
It is a form of addiction. And
distraction.
And distraction. And again, the Native Americans are subject to that. they're moved off their places, taken in down from the mesas to the reservation where housing is given, and electricity and plumbing, and now you have to have a car, and you're out in the middle of Arizona where you can't, there's no jobs, and suddenly there's, for the first time, there's debt. There's not the way that they live, there's no such thing as debt. But there's no way to satisfy that kind of monetary debt. And so then they lose spirit and it becomes drugs and alcohol.
You said that every invention involves extracting. It's a gift. It's a gift to us from the spirits.
Yeah.
But we don't acknowledge it as such.
Yeah.
And we don't give back. And you said that living with heart is about making of your life a continual offering.
Continual offering. If you live from the heart, every moment is ceremony. Every moment. If you're living in the heart, you're in ceremony, which means, you're bringing together the tangible of the world in relation with the transformative spirit. That's what ceremony does. It's an act of transforming. And we don't see that that way. For example, we move away from the tradition, for example, of ceremony of the Native Americans, although they give us the gift of showing life is ceremony, if you can know how to live. But for us, in every day, means we have a kind of a built-in ceremony. Be in the heart, and you're in ceremony, because the heart is a unity of spirit and matter.
You said we are matter in order to see the world as spirit.
Yes, that's the other thing, is we make this kind of division between the spiritual or the heavenly and the earthly. And but why then? Why were we born as physical beings in a physical world? What is that other than we feel like, well, we were born here to suffer, to find ways to get out of here, to be in heaven.
To get to heaven.
To get to heaven, right. Right. But heaven's right here. We were born physical in a physical world to learn to see the physical spiritually. Isn't that?
One of the big challenges you gave me was the exercise we did to go for a walk in the woods and to say out loud, "Grandfather Sky, may I approach you?" And similarly, "Father Sky, may I approach you?" "Grandmother Earth, may I approach you?" And I said to myself, how am I going to do that? I'm not a child. I can't be that unsophisticated. But then in doing it, there is a transformation.
Just the simple doing that, you feel it immediately. Because Grandfather Sky responds and Mother Earth responds. And you feel that immediately. It's like coming home. It is coming home. And it's a new child level, where we can do that and be aware of what we're doing. The child lives it, just is immersed in it. We have to be able to do that and be in the awareness of what is happening.
And then that's just the first question. Then you say, may I, may I approach you? What can I do to serve you? And then the answers come.
The answers come. They come as in the realm of feeling, in the heart. You can feel the response. Then you let that stay, and it will it will begin to reveal itself in a more conscious way. You know.
And one of the remarkable things was when you said, think of your mind? No, you didn't say think of your mind.
I said look at your mind.
Look at your mind. Look at your mind.
Close your eyes and look at your mind, and you see blackness. But you really look at, it's as if you're looking at it. And then start looking at the mind as blue, as the blue of the sky. And that's just one of the little tools to be able to stop thinking. Mm-hmm. When you're concentrating on the blue of the mind, you've given it something to do that is not thinking. You kind of trick the mind. So then it's busy concentrating on the blue while your body is able to feel where you are and what's happening, and the life of Earth and the life of what's around you is all felt bodily. We can't do that as long as our mind is filled with its own, thinking constantly. We don't even know we do that, but we do.
Well, the joke was on me because here I've been practicing centering prayer for years now, struggling with monkey mind,
mm-hmm.
And then all you had to say was, there are clouds in the mind, and just whisk them away. And there's this blue sky. That's your mind. Just like that.
Just like that.
And
it's difficult to sustain, but the amazing thing, that little practice, you can do it 1,000 times a day anywhere. You can be going to the coffee machine and just do it, do it with that way of seeing the blue of the mind, and suddenly you're here because you're now in tune with your body and what it's doing.
And how many times do I look at the sky? Not very often.
No.
To just open to the sky, the spaciousness of the sky. We've had the blessing of really beautiful blue skies, clear blue skies, these past several days. And the exaltation, the natural exaltation that arises from the simple act of looking at the beautiful, spacious blue sky and knowing that's your mind. That's my mind.
Yeah. In a way, you can feel it, that all of Earth and nature is the blue sky meditating. It comes from it's just an image. I think that's what is happening right now is from this place of sky, everything is that we know is being meditated.
And the other dimension I think you opened us to is humility. You talked about unprepossessing. That word really stuck out for me because I love the snowdrops that come, the very first flowers in this part of the country that bloom in very early spring, usually in the snow. And they're the most unprepossessing little flowers. As a matter of fact, they look like they have a cowl, that they won't even show their faces. They're so unprepossessing. And you described a ventricle in the heart.
Little teeny place in the heart, the most vulnerable place of our being. If it's ever accidentally touched, we die immediately. But it is that little nerve that's actually the place where spirit and earth, spirit and matter come together. Yeah, and it is the most unprepossessing place of the whole body, and it's the place where everything arises as simultaneously spirit and matter.
And so the lesson is you cannot approach spirit without humility.
Yes. Yeah. And when we're in this contemplative but very awake state of being with body, earth, and spirit, and ask humbly, with great humility, Mother Earth with great humility, I ask that for health of this body, if it will bring me more into harmony with you. That's it is always answered. It's always answered. Never not answered. But it comes in surprising ways, unexpected ways, that whatever we ask in that state of humility, through body, with earth, with heavens, something we'll notice in the world, when it can feel it immediately in the heart, begins to open the answer.
Can you give us an example of that?
Oh gosh. Well, like, it happened here, definitely. On Friday, there was this kind of difficult moment where we did a practice, and many people said, I didn't get anything. So I felt it was a moment where the whole thing could fall apart. So that evening, I went and did this contemplation with Mother Earth and asked, Mother Earth, please, if this increases harmony with you, can this be resolved? Well, then, what in the world happened? Mainly, it just disappeared. It disappeared. What happened was, this other thing happened in the group that I mentioned after. That I had been approaching the group out of really 2 years of being quite alone. So I was doing all my work alone, and then I brought it and started to, but the relationship hadn't opened up. The relationship between us all in the group, and the moment I recognized that of course it isn't working, because actually nobody knows anything alone by themselves. I think they do, but it doesn't really open in any real living way except through relationship, through relating, and just as I don't know me, there's no way that I can know me except in relation to the way that you present to me all of the challenges that I need to awaken. But that's so for anybody. I just don't think it's possible to, but even if it's a relationship with God, it's a relationship
with
God. Even if that's the relationship, it's a relationship.
You never mentioned God. In 5 days, you never mentioned God.
I know.
Now you mention God.
Well, I had to consider, what it would be. Does being completely alone actually mean that the inner life and the spirit won't really truly open? And I don't think it does until that moment of the challenge of the other. But that could be God, sure.
I want to thank you so much for this time together and for this magnificent retreat.
Thank you very much. This place is so magical, wonderful. That's the other thing that happened here, is that the place brought it to happen. The place, being in this place.
Yeah, and it's been very muddy, which helps.
Yes, right. Oh, it was beautiful. The mud and with the flowing waters and the ice melting and the crispness, and it's such a magnificent, it's a magical place.
I agree.
Mm.